Welcome to the Diversity Connector podcast, where we explore the rich tapestry of human experiences. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the country on which we meet today. I would also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging, and together as we dive into conversations that bridge cultures, challenge stereotypes, and celebrate the unique perspectives each of us brings to the table. Each episode is a journey through stories and insights from a kaleidoscope of voices, each sharing their colorful narrative. Whether you're at home, on the go, or just anywhere in between, you're now part of a community that values understanding, inclusivity, and the beauty of diversity. So plug in your headphones, get comfortable, and let's connect through the power of our shared stories. Welcome, and thank you for joining us on the Diversity Connector podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Diversity Connector. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating young woman. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, and share your story with us today.
My name is Abbey Pantano. I am the founder of the Impact Collab, a digital community membership for impact-led founders. And I am based on Gadigal country in the Eora Nation, so out in the inner west of Sydney in New South Wales, Australia. And a little bit about me and my story, and I guess what brought me to this role, this calling, if you will, is it really started, I guess, well, first I'll acknowledge the elephant in the room, which is my accent, which moves across kind of different nationalities at times. I was born in New Mexico in the States. I moved to New Zealand when I was 8, grew up there, and I've been in Australia for 12 years. And my upbringing was really spent in the mountains. I was very fortunate to have a family that shares my value system. Living up in the mountains, we took on the responsibility that if we were like right at the tail end of a national park, and if we were ever in that national park and we saw rubbish or anything that was left aside, we had sometimes that people would dump. I remember at one time someone dumped rugs out in the mountains, and so it was one of those things where it was our role as custodians to take responsibility for that and to make sure that it was cleared up. And so this is something that was really instilled from an early age, from living in the mountains to then living in New Zealand, and we always lived rurally. And I think that that's a value system that's followed with me, but went through kind of that journey of climbing the corporate ladder. I have a background in marketing and partnerships. I loved fashion, and so I ended up actually getting into the rag trade and in retail. And it was interesting because while I loved the work that I did, I really got deep into partnerships, which we'll obviously touch on in this conversation. But there was always this niggling feeling of going, am I contributing to a bigger problem here? And am I basically helping sell a future landfill? And, coming back to my value system, it was just something that would niggle. And actually the turning point for me had been, my husband has got his rescue diver certification, and he'd always said, I really want to take you diving. And so I was like, okay, let's do this. And we went out to Thailand to go and do my PADI certification, because the water's warmer there, and I'm a bit of a wuss with cold water. And it was incredible. And I remember though, start in the pool, and then you have your dives out in the open water. And I want to say it was maybe the third dive that we had out in the water, where suddenly I realized that there was just as much plastic in the water as there were fish. And so what would happen was I would see I'd see a bit of plastic glimmering in the water, and I'd swim after it, grab it, and I'd put it into my wetsuit. Look at some fish. Oh, saw another one, would swim after it. It got to a point where it almost became a really dystopian treasure hunt, if you will. It kind of I remember we finished this dive, and I come up on the boat, and I'm like unloading all of this plastic out of my wetsuit, and the instructor is just looking at me like I'm mad. But it was that was like a real turning point where I was like, we can't live like this. I need to be part of the solution. And so actually came back to Australia and decided to set up my very first social enterprise, which was these wheat stem drinking straws. I discovered these drinking straws. So fun fact, the very first straws were made of straw. So that's why they're called straws. So it's actually, you extract the grain, you strip the outer layers, and you end up with a tube, and you just bake it. It's super natural. It's about as carbon neutral as you can get. You can actually put it into your compost as well as for layering as well. So it's a true circular economy product, which I was so excited about. And I got a couple of big clients and went down to 0.6 with my current job. So I was working 3 days a week. And the other 2, I was out here peddling my straws, pacing up and down in front of bars, building up my courage to walk in. And one thing that I discovered on that journey was the businesses that were succeeding in the market were the ones that were joining business networks. So I was like, okay, if I want to make this work, I need to join business networks. The thing is I was turning up to these business networks, and I just felt so silly, because someone would go, oh, well, I've got this big architecture firm, or they had this big product business, and while I could kind of cover up with, oh yes, I sell sustainable drinkware products to hospitality businesses, ultimately I was selling straws to bars. The power of marketing and language to be able to paint a picture. And the thing was, though, it's funny because when I go to those business meetups, to them they just saw a straw, but to me I saw so much more than a straw. I saw a conversation. I saw this for someone to go, oh, that's interesting, I haven't seen that. To have info sheets, on a table to go, did you know? And how, I didn't want to be that person who's going to a bar, and this is fortunately that paper straws are everywhere, but I didn't want to be that person who was shaking her finger going, you don't need a straw. But I wanted to be part of the solution again. But I don't think that they quite understood that. And it was funny because I didn't really realize that it was a social enterprise until I went to a Business Chicks conference, and there's a woman, Mickey Agarwal, who's the founder of Thinks Underpants, the very first period undies. She's also founder of Tushy, which is it's a bidet. And she was telling her story and talking about how essentially she built this product which addressed a market need. And then what she would do is she would find causes that really sung to her soul. So I believe for the bidet, for Tushy, what she found was over in India, women would hold their bladders all day because it wasn't safe for them to go out to the bathroom by themselves. And so they would wait all day until they could come together as packs, and then in the night they would go out together and go to the bathroom. And so they would end up with a myriad of different health problems as a result of it. And so what she did is she actually found an organization who was connected at the community level, who had expertise and skill sets in addressing the issue. They would go into those areas, they would build the facilities, they would teach them how to maintain them, and then they would move on to the next space. And I feel like it was like I was hit by a lightning bolt. I just had this realization where I could do good things in the world through the power of my business. And I didn't have to be, I remember there was actually a quote that said, it was a mentor where I was talking about the straws, and I was going, well, he goes, how will you sell these straws to the CFO? Because they're like 20 times the cost, right? And I was like, well, it's just the right thing to do. And he goes, no, you need to figure out how to sell it to the CEO. And the problem that you have right now is you're out in the field and you're catching butterflies. But what you need to do is you need to build the garden, and the butterflies will come. And that was such a reframing for me to really move away from this focus on impact, to trust that I have, that I'm a heart-led entrepreneur, that my heart is in the right place, I have a North Star, that my impact is embedded, but I needed to be like a mean, lean, mean, money-making, business machine, and I need to think about what was going to be my garden, what was going to attract those butterflies in. And so, yeah, that was such an aha moment for me. Then COVID happened, and I decided I no longer wanted to sell a commodity product. So it was, in a way, it was nice to have something to blame. I was made redundant from my role at the company that I worked for, and the opportunity came for me to become a part owner in a co-working space. Actually, it seems like an odd thing to do with COVID, but it was really like there was heaps of property that was around. We could negotiate great terms with the rent. And my husband and his new business partner, they wanted a new office. They were like, look, give us this room and you can take care of the desks. I was like, I'm not doing anything. And so I kind of went on my own version of an experiment, a surrender experiment. You know it, sometimes a path is laid in front of you and you decide to go down the path. Some of you might be familiar with Michael Singer's book. It's felt a little bit like mansplaining, I'll be honest, when listening to it, but the core themes really resonated with me. I love this, going, sometimes the universe puts something in front of you for a reason, and going into that with curiosity and an open mindset to see where that lands. So we opened the co-working space, and I made that a destination for impact-led businesses. The first lockdown ended in Sydney. Everyone flooded out because at the end of the first lockdown, they were like, okay, everyone, it's safe. Come on out. And so I think everyone recognized during that lockdown, maybe they're stepping into their own impact-led business, or they just realized, they're like, I need community. And so there was one point when I'm looking around and every seat was taken. And I remember looking at my co-founders going, who are all these people? This is just incredible. And, we were really firing on all cylinders. And then the second lockdown happened. And it went on and on and on. I mean, nothing compared to Melbourne, but as a co-working space, I remember explicitly, I actually joined a community for community builders called the Community Collective, which I highly recommend for anyone who's interested or passionate about community. But I remember we would come on the call and they put us into breakout rooms and give us themes to unpack, and just crying, it was going so well. And my space used to be this buzzy space, and where is everyone? Like they can't come in, but it gave me this opportunity to go, okay, I've got a community. We were connected on Slack. I had gotten a bit of an indication of what they were looking in terms of connection, in terms of collaboration, skill sharing as well. So I needed to actually go back to the drawing board and think, how can I deliver this digitally? And it's an interesting one because I think during COVID, none of us really knew necessarily what we wanted or what we needed, but we were like, I think this is what I want. And I remember we'd pull together and be like, oh, turns out that actually wasn't what I wanted, but I really like these elements. And so it was such a lesson in failure, and realizing the power of failure to be able to get to the next step. You just had to go over and over and over again and throw yourself out there. I felt like the guy in the bar who was hitting on everyone in there and getting one yes and going, all right, okay, holding on to my win. But through this process, and it was just really because I was trying to keep my members connected and I didn't want them to fall through the cracks. And I think I live better in service to others than I do in service to myself. So this is where I felt the most comfortable as well. Both my parents are in healthcare. It's something that just passes down. But I suddenly realized that I was like, this is working. And in the Slack channel, they were engaging and supporting each other. It wasn't all me. Questions were being asked and being answered before I could even get to them. And I was like, oh, it really feels like this is something here. And then what started happening is they started referring in people in their network. And so we started growing organically, which was just incredible. And so I was like, I think I might be onto something here. So by the time the lockdown ended, the membership, because right from day dot, they were paying for that membership. So that was really getting its momentum. And yeah, I guess fast forward then another year later, my co-founder had basically said, I'd be open to buying out your shares in the co-working space. And I went, do you know what? This digital membership has become a life of its own, a life force of its own. And if I don't have to spend time making sure there's milk in the fridge, that gives me more time to go, how better can I serve and show up for these amazing businesses that are within the community. So I sold the co-work space in 2022. We changed from Seed Impact to the Impact Collab. And I've been building since. And today, what it looks like is essentially an ecosystem of support. So we've got our experts, which have all of the different specializations. Once I have an expert in a certain specialization, I don't have another duplication. And then as our social enterprise, it's a one-for-one model. So for every paid membership, we have a subsidized or free spot that's made available for organizations who are making a tangible, measurable impact at a grassroots level. So it's really a true collaboration and a brain's trust, if you will, to help bridge the gap between those grassroots organizations and those who are doing the work in the offices and those skill sets that they have. And together we make the Impact Fam.
This is an amazing story. And it's interesting with COVID, what actually happened for a lot of people who your back was against the wall. You had to be really creative and react and respond to what was coming at you. So my first question is, reflecting on your extensive background in marketing and partnerships, how has this experience shaped your approach to building and supporting brands that are driven by a social mission?
I think one of the really key things that I took away from my experience working in these big organizations, because the company I worked for, we had offices in LA, London, as well as Sydney, and I worked across all three. But the power to build a brand and a business through partnerships. From a marketing perspective, I obviously was applying it through there, through collaborations, creative collaborations with other brands to be able to elevate ourselves, to reach new audiences, to innovate. The power of bringing other brains together to be able to create something even better, just like a transformer. So that was definitely one piece that was really key. Another thing was, I recall the very first company I worked for is the world's biggest eyewear manufacturer. They're enormous, called Luxottica, and huge teams. And I remember there was one point when I'd said, I want to learn more about Google Analytics. And my boss said, oh, well, go speak to John. That's his only job. He literally just spends all day on Google Analytics. And I was like, how incredible to be able to be in a space where there's this depth of knowledge. And I remember going off and setting up my own business and going, oh my gosh, I've got to be John and Judy and Marcus, and I've got to be everyone. And feeling that I was at this complete loss. And part of the reason why I wanted to set up the Impact Club, because I was like, I know how these businesses operate, and how can I bring some of those principles into small business? And that was the other piece of going, okay, well, if you're thinking about the big corporate structures where you have lots of knowledge, can we actually apply this to a community experience to be able to take ourselves to the next level?
Now, in terms of brand building, in your view, what are the key elements that make a brand magnetic in today's market, especially when it comes to businesses with a social purpose?
I would say the two key ones, storytelling. Oh, the power of a good story for people to be able to come on that journey is unlike anything else. I recently went to a talk that was titled Changing Our Reality Through Stories. And it was talking about how actually in daytime dramas, soap operas, in a country, they had something where there was a domestic violence case that was happening with the neighbors. And what happened was when they could hear something going off next door, they started knocking on the wall to distract and be like, I can hear you. And what happened actually was that ended up catching within that country, and actually became a thing where if something was going on next door, that they would start knocking. And so that was actually not even taken from necessarily real life. It was a fictional story, but it was that representation where like, I can see this and how it comes to fruition. And sometimes being able to demonstrate the storytelling of what we're trying to achieve. Also, there was a discussion around one of the challenges for climate change is that there's the hero's journey There's the call to action, answering the challenges. And the problem with the climate action side is that we haven't been able to hear a hero's journey yet, because we hear the call to action, but we haven't been able to find the resolution yet. Whereas when we actually can tell that hero's journey around a cause, people can see themselves, they can lean into that experience, and they want to be part of that experience. So the power to convey your story is just limitless. And the other piece is social proof. Well, and you are the queen of storytelling, so preaching to the converted there.
I love it.
And
the social proof,
social proof is a big piece. Having a supportive community that stands behind your brand, that advocates for it, that refers others in, writing reviews, but actually interacting, engaging with your community, giving them power to feel like there's a co-creation that exists. These are the people who will go to bat to you to the ends of the earth. And you think that you're speaking to one person, but you're actually speaking to their entire network as well. So if you can light that up in them, that power to disseminate, and again, the butterflies will come.
Yes, I love it. Yeah, that analogy is so beautiful and so visual. I can actually see, if you do want those butterflies to come, you get rid of all the weeds and you just make it so attractive that they will come to you. So can you share a standout story or example where a strategic partnership significantly propelled an impact-led startup forward? And what made that partnership successful?
So the example I'm going to give, unfortunately, isn't in the impact partnership side, but it is a really strong example of a partnership that propelled a business to great heights. So essentially, the company that I worked for was a summer lifestyle brand before I set up my own business. And their key product was the inflatable floaty. The beat up old thing that you would find in your nan's garage that you would have for 8 seasons. And through the power of partnership, the most effective partnership, there are different ones that we had done, but the most effective one we had done was we partnered with Tiffany Cooper. So Tiffany Cooper is an illustrator over in France. Now, Tiffany Cooper had actually done another partnership. She became friends with Karl Lagerfeld. Obviously, doing a partnership with Karl Lagerfeld, very difficult, but a partnership with Tiffany Cooper, that's actually quite accessible. Because she'd already had the associations with Karl Lagerfeld, the partnership that we did with her, the media already knew her name. They were waiting to see what she did next. She was established within that fashion space. What happened was, your nan's old beat up pool floaty suddenly became this fashion icon of the summer. We had windows in Bloomingdale's in New York. We took over Printemps, the Galeries Lafayette and Champs-Élysées, Liberty London. We were put in windows with Hermes, Ferragamo, Cartier. And that was through the power of a really tailored partnership to be able to elevate an $80 floaty. It just blew my mind. I'm traveling around the world going, how did this happen? And and our marketing budget was minuscule. It was so tiny, but it was the power of a carefully curated partnership to propel ourselves into that sphere that it changed the game for us, and it changed the game for the brand.
That is crazy. Now, networking is crucial in any business. How do you guide new businesses in building their initial network, and what pitfalls should they avoid?
The first quote, and I use this all the time, but I remember reading it and it just landed for me. It was, I used to think that networking was going into a room with a name badge and pitching myself 5 times fast. But what I've realized is actually it's going out and doing a series of nice things for other people and knowing those nice things will come back in turn. When you show up authentically, when you show up as yourself, when you show up in generosity, that good energy will come back. It's like fairy dust. It will come back. But you have to give, and you have to be willing to show it for others. One of my favorite things, I remember when I first had my business and I said, selling these straws, and someone would go, I know someone, I'll connect you. And I went, I just remember being so deeply grateful for that connection. It's something where it was so easy for them. And I remember as I slowly built up my network, it was the thing I was most excited about, is going, who can I connect to you that can help you get to that next level? So the power of generosity, of kind spirit, of giving without the expectation in return, and knowing that it might be a month, it might be 2 months, it might be 2 years, but in the words of, I believe it's Maya Angelou, people forget what you say, but they will never forget how you made them feel.
That is so true. My grandmother used to say that the universe is like a giant bank, and we have to keep depositing good deeds, and they come back tenfold in the most unexpected ways, and never from the person you helped. And that's the story of my life, just constantly finding ways to add value, to give. And you're right, it comes back. It's just like a boomerang effect. Absolutely incredible to keep doing. So,
and I think
what are some of
the other piece of, I just wanted to add one more
Sorry.
piece to that, which is, one more piece to add to that is the power of finding your people. For those who share the same value system as you, for those who light your soul on fire. I remember the recognition that, we are the average of the 5 people we're closest to. And when I started this journey building community, going, oh my gosh, I could actually curate this. I can move away from working in companies where it was about proximity to taking intentional action about who is in my proximity, and who is my 5 average. And so I think don't settle for proximity. Seek those that set your soul on fire, that up-level you, and don't stop searching until you find them. Just don't settle for less.
So what are some of the most effective strategies that you recommend for scaling a social enterprise sustainably? And how do you balance growth with maintaining a strong brand purpose?
Look, it's a great question, and I think it's something that I'm still working at myself. I know that one thing I can speak to in terms of what gave me the time to learn, to grow, to move out of a space where, to be honest, I felt like I couldn't breathe. I live in Sydney, so Sydney is an expensive city to live in. I am lucky to have a mortgage, but I also have a mortgage. So it's one of the things where I couldn't necessarily move to a smaller apartment. I had made commitments. I don't have children yet, but I am due to have my first in 3 weeks. But I did have 2 expensive dogs, and a husband with wonderful expensive taste. He's wonderful. But I think a big piece that really transcended my journey was finding what I call a side stable. So we all know what the side hustle is, where you're working for your big company and it's probably using a lot of your brain power, but I'm just going to do this on the side in my little gaps. That's a hard way to build a business, because a lot of times the main hustle, the main business is taking all of your energy. Now, I gave myself a runway. I ran out of that runway. And I was getting to a point where I was no longer making decisions that were right for my business, for my value system, and for my community. I was doing out of a place of fear, and saying yes to things that I shouldn't be saying yes to. Then an opportunity came up to work for a company. It's a female entrepreneur company. A female entrepreneur community. And so there was an alignment, but there was differentiators that. And they were looking for someone for 2 days a week. And it was something where I had to have a conversation with my ego, because there's a point where I was like, I used to lead global teams. I used to travel overseas, And I'm suddenly now stepping into essentially, to an extent, a coordinator role.
Yes.
I'm taking a hourly rate that I have not accepted for 10 years and I would not accept. But
Yeah.
I knew that the brain power required to complete the task, I looked through the JD and I was like, easy, 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 easy. I could do this in my sleep. I was fortunate in that I found a role that was similar to what I was doing, but they were my community on steroids. They have 1,000 members. I have just shy of 100. But what I did though was setting up with them, and I worked with the founder and I said, I want to build in mentorship hours. So we all know what the cost of a great mentor is. So every month I had 1 hour with her and the business development manager to go, here are my problems. How would you work through these? So the value that was there, and also I think having that transparency where there'd be certain things where I go, I think this is wonderful. I'd like to retrofit it for my community. How can we do this in a way that's not plagiarizing, but it's retrofits for here? So it meant that there was this two-way communication, but it helped me so I could pay my bills. It gave me the opportunity to work as part of a team, and it really energized me to go, that was really fun, but I also don't want to be doing welcome calls for the rest of my life. And so I could then go and work on my business and be really excited and go, okay, let's how do we charge forward? But that has just been such a game changer where I've now gone, I stopped, I was able to think strategically. There's so many studies around the power of the feelings of shame and how that can block your creativity receptors in your brain. It's as soon as that starts to play when you're in the building space, it can really affect the decisions that you make. And so being able to actually go, I have balance now, that was a real game changer for me. And that's where now I see the success that I have with the Impact Club. I wouldn't have had enough gas in the tank to be able to get to this point. And I don't think we would have such a beautiful community if I wasn't able to make decisions out of heart rather than pure head.
Man, I could talk to you forever. So let's finish off on a personal note. What has been the most rewarding part of your work? And can you share a moment or a project that particularly resonated with you or made a significant impact on your professional journey?
Yeah, absolutely. I think certainly one thing that I just love is going into our Slack channel and seeing the energy going off in there, where it's, you move out of having to be the cheerleader for everyone to realizing that everyone's cheerleading each other. I had a gathering in Sydney last week, and there was one point where I saw two of the members give each other a really big hug, and I was like, oh, do you know each other outside of the Impact Collab? And they go, no, we met through here. Seeing these authentic, meaningful, beautiful connections that come out of it, the partnerships that they build, that is just my gold. It's my fuel when I hear, even someone going, we went to a festival together. We were talking and they were going, and I was like, I'll go as well. And I remember just that power to not only build businesses, but build relationships and build community, and the depth that interweaves and intertwines us all is wonderful. And and when I see new members join and they're just embraced with a big warm hug going, it's kind of like, you found us. you're here, and we've been waiting for you. And they bring that energy, and so I'm just so grateful, and I love being able to see that come to life. And then as far as specific stories, I think that, one of my favorite ones was back when I had the co-working space, and I had a member who she had heard about the refugees who were coming from Manus Island, and they'd been on Manus Island for 7 years. And they were coming over, and they were given something like 7 days to acclimatize, assimilate, and then find jobs. And she was like, I can't stand by this. This isn't right. I feel like I need to do something. And so she shared that, going, I don't know what it is, but I need to do something. And then another member said, I actually run events for a living. I'd love to, let's do something. Let's pull it together. So they pulled together this amazing event. And then another member who had attended, who was a grant expert, was like, let's make this into an event series. So they ended up accessing funding, ran it as a series of 3 events. It was just beyond.
That is just beautiful. And you created that. You were the ripple effect, that story. Wow. Well, I'll tell you this. I could talk to you forever. It has just been absolutely exquisite talking to you today. Pleasure. And thank you to everybody who tuned in today. We are trying to connect people from all over the world, their wisdom, their inspiration, to celebrate our diversity and to see the power of collaboration. So tune in again tomorrow when I interview yet another amazing guest. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world, and bye for now. Thanks again, Abbey.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap, everybody, on today's episode of the Diversity Connector podcast. Thank you for tuning in and being part of our vibrant and global conversation. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a tapestry of diverse perspectives. Remember, every story you've heard today is a thread in the larger fabric of our shared humanity. So, as you step back into your world, carry these stories with you and let them inspire you to embrace and celebrate the rich diversity around us. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these inspiring stories with more listeners. Do follow us on social media by looking for the Diversity Connector podcast for more updates. Until then, keep connecting, keep listening, and keep celebrating the beauty of diversity. This is the Diversity Connector podcast signing off. Stay curious, stay open,